Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. It's episode number 172 today. It's the three amigos back here again, John, Logan, and Phil. Today's podcast is brought to you by Epilog Laser. You can quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloglaser.com. I'm going to get started with a couple of comments from last episode. Alfreda158 says, Logan mentioned pistachios last episode, which makes me wonder if all of his nuts have dropped.
Sounds kind of personal.
Yeah.
I'm not going to comment.
So are all the walnuts down?
Yes. Well, no. I take that back. They are not. I can definitely still see some in the tippy tops of the tree. It's been windy the last couple days, so okay. I think that's taken most of them down. I haven't heard one. You'll hear like maybe one a day hit the shop now. So it's like all of them around the shop are down.
Yeah.
But I'm officially declaring walnut harvesting season done at the Whitmer homestead.
Okay.
I bagged up all of the dried walnuts this morning. Sent you guys a picture of my nut sack. It's 55 pounds. And then I have another half a sack I have to fill in that room. And I forgot where I put my burlap bags. So, to be fair, out of that 55-pound bag, I would guess half of those are probably squirrel nuts because they're small.
Oh, yeah.
But you don't. What I discovered is you can't really tell. You can't judge a nut size based on its outer husk.
Right.
Like some of them have a really thick outer husk, some of them don't. So it's like some of them I'm like, this is gonna be a giant nut, and it came out like a little, tiny little guy. And some of them are like, oh, this one's kind of a medium sized one, and it's all nut on the inside. So
when you're opening up any of these nuts, are you thinking to yourself, this is the size of a dinosaur brain?
No, I am not. Though I will now. Thank you.
Yeah. You don't have gutters on the upper part of your shop, do you?
Not yet. I don't. So they would be full.
Yeah, I was like, are you gonna have to get up and clean those every year? Or
I was looking at gutters for the porch section and above my garage doors, and I will be putting gutter guards on them to keep the walnuts from clogging.
Or you could put like a tiny little auger system that
feeds
the nuts down into a husker and just like an automated system. Hopefully no squirrels fall into it, but
passive nut generation.
Yep.
Yeah. So your whole shop roof then becomes a giant walnut collector.
That's right.
Yeah.
Some people use it for solar, those fools.
Right.
Yeah. Ron Johnson from Central Ohio says, to start with, I planned a retirement woodworking shop 15 years ago and started watching your show, I think, 10 years ago. You have been an inspiration to me over these last years, to say the least. Thank you. In response to the benchtop made of Osage orange, I should clarify my thoughts on it. My parents had a small farm, and we referred to it as hedge apple, which we had thought. The fruit they bore were big and heavy. You had to watch walking under them, or gravity was cruel. To my knowledge, we never saw anything eat it. As I was told by the old-timers, they started out as fence row bush, like multiflora rose, and anything else, if not kept in check, gets out of control. The hedge apples grew into trees of substantial size in this fertile soil. We used them for fence posts, but primarily firewood. It's extremely heavy and hard, has a high oil content that prevents rot, and throws off a blue flame when burning. My aunt tried to burn it in her fireplace, but it popped and cracked so bad it blew sparks out onto the floor. As a young teenager, I took some logs to shop class and carefully turned some mini ball bats on the wood lathe for my cousin. The finished wood was amazingly beautiful. My brother still has a cutting board that he made for his wife 60 years ago. They do grow very large here, and I've seen some hardwood dealers offer the lumber for sale, but it's a thorny tree to work with. And the best analogy I can describe when harvesting it is trying to pull a sock hat from the bottom of a barrel of fish hooks.
Okay.
Stephen Draper says, at the age of 72, my skin is paper thin and the smallest injuries are painful and take much longer to heal. Consequently, I take plenty of time and spend any amount of money necessary to ensure safety.
I only laugh at this because I remember very clearly about 3 or 4 years ago, my dad and I were doing something together. And I'm all of a sudden like, why is there blood all over everything? And he looks at me with the most serious expression ever, and he said, "Old man skin." And he had just brushed up against, and my dad's like, he's not even 60, he's like 56,
right, he's like
57.
Phil's age.
Yeah.
Whoa. All right, there you go. So it was good comments. If you have any that you want to leave, you can do that on our YouTube channel, or you can send us an email at woodsmith@woodsmith.com. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is, in spite of the fact that we do a lot of stuff on YouTube, I don't watch much YouTube. Okay. I don't have a lot of time for it. But recently, I have been watching more, and I follow Adam Savage's Tested channel.
Yes. Yep.
From Mythbusters fame.
Yep. As do I.
And his shop, or cave that he calls it, is outrageous.
It makes me itchy. Like, and you know what I mean. There's so much stuff in it that I just itch. Like, yeah. Granted, he's in the middle of, I think, San Francisco. So, like, I'm guessing it's not a very large space, and it's probably a very odd-shaped space.
It kind of feels that way, yes. And also, he has so many things going on.
Yeah.
Because he has several videos where he's just answering questions, and those are kind of interesting because in the middle of the answering some other question, he'll give you some little insight onto what is going on in his shop or something, because he does like model making and puppetry and woodworking and metalworking,
everything,
and everything. And he wants to have everything at his disposal, like within reach. So
he calls it his first order of retrievability.
Yes. So he deliberately hoards things so that he knows that he has hardware. Like, he's got a thing for like hand wheels and knobs, so he's just got drawers and drawers full of that kind of stuff. So
I'm guessing if he's in San Francisco, it's a little bit harder for him to run to Menards or the local hardware store.
Yeah.
So it's good to have everything right there.
So anyway, one of the things that I was thinking about in watching a few of his episodes, he did one where he made a hand vise. It was kind of a cool project. And he did a lot of work on a humongous milling machine that he has in his shop.
Yep.
So I have two thoughts on that. One is, I need to find somebody who's as into metalworking as I am into woodworking, just to have that crossover for, because we've talked about it on the show a few times, like having a friend that has a sawmill, just for example. Mm-hmm. So if you knew somebody who was like into blacksmith or had like a milling machine that liked to make stuff out of metal, would be cool to do trade stuff, which then made the very logical connection is how close are you / would you ever consider getting a milling machine, Logan Whitmer?
I have bid on a few of them. And let me tell you why. Okay. Let me tell you something. I, in middle school and high school is kind of where my woodworking journey really like launched, because I've went through this before. I had access to a full shop. Our shop was probably, I'm guessing, 10,000 square foot. It was probably 100 by 100.
Wow.
I mean, you think we're farm town, you know, we always have people pulling in combines and stuff that we'd work on. We didn't have an auto body class, but we had a full metals division. We had a full woodworking division, and we weren't a big school, but we had access, or I had access to 3 different engine lathes. We had several arc welders because that's what all farmers used. A couple MIGs and 1 TIG welder. We had a foundry. We had a couple of forges, and we had 2 knee mills, 2 Bridgeport knee mills, and they're very cool. Now, my problem, like, I would love to have a Bridgeport in here,
Right.
but woodworking and metalworking doesn't really cross over real well because stuff gets dirty and oily and nasty, and I don't really want to do that.
Right.
Now that we got rid of the boat, I got a little room next door. So, yes, I have actually bid on a few of them, and it was more of like I kind of hope I don't win this at this price because I don't know what I'm going to do with it right now. But
Right.
like, I can't let it go for lower than this. I would love to have a Bridgeport. Like, I don't want like a CNC mill. I don't want any of that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I would, woodworking CNCs are a different story, but like, I don't want a CNC mill. I don't want to mess with that. I want one where it's a Bridgeport knee mill. I have a X, a Y, and a Z axis, and you hand crank them. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
a basic manual mill is what I would like.
Okay.
I've looked at like the Chinese or imported small style, like a benchtop one. Like, they
Right.
make them, they're kind of like drill press style or drill press size, benchtop drill press size.
Right. Yeah.
And
Like the size of that general that we have in our.
Exactly. And I just there's a community of people that take those, buy them, tear them apart, and like swap out parts and stuff, and actually make them like super high spec mills.
Wow.
And I ain't got time for that crap. So
You're full-time walnutting right now. I mean, it's like you can't take on another thing.
well, it's like I mean, it's fascinating to me that people do that. Like, I mean, they'll replace everything with nicer gibs and stuff, and tighten tolerances, change gears out for milled gears versus plastic or cast gears. So like, there's people that do that, and I'm obviously hyper fixated on this before,
Right.
but I think that just a good old Bridgeport, made in the 60s, 50s, 60s, XY axis would be super cool.
Yeah.
Now, would it run once a week? No. Would it run once a month? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, when I need it,
Right.
and the other thing that I thought about, and this is something I thought about pretty heavily when Vince was here, because Vince was kind of into the machining and stuff. I don't know if there's any magazines around. I think there are. I think I've looked at a couple, but I don't know if there's any magazines around that are kind of like the Woodsmith style in metal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we used to get one that was like Home Shop Machinist. There were 2.
Yes, and
it was Home
yeah.
Shop Machinist and like Small Shop Machinist or something like that.
Where they kind of have projects, and it's like,
Yep.
oh, hey, turn a ball peen hammer on your lathe and stuff like that. Like, I think that would be super cool, and like, because I don't have a need to turn around and run a mill in my day to day, really.
Right.
I don't, but I think it would be cool to be able to pick one up, flip through pages, pick a project, be like, hey, this looks like this would be really cool to make. And then make it,
Yeah. I think it would be cool for some of the, custom pieces of hardware would be fun for on cabinet projects or, something semi-decorative but functional all at the same time, Like Chris has gotten into, he's done some blacksmithing kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I kind of feel like it would be really cool to just give him a milling machine, find one,
Yes.
and then just make him take
gift
it.
it to him. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then he'd have to
Yeah. Have to figure out how to use it.
Right.
I will say I could really see one for making hand tools.
Sure.
Like milling out the I actually have in the closet. I saw it yesterday removing it in that router table. There's a great big long jointer in there that I bought that it's like I need a milling machine to flatten the bottom and cut the mouth in. Like stuff like that. Like stupid things like that. Like, yeah, that'd be fun. I would be down with that. I actually have a friend right now that I'm trying to sell. The guy I got my walnut beater from. I'm trying to sell a South Bend engine lathe for him. That comes with, it comes with a boatload of tooling.
Oh, sure.
The problem is it's a metal lathe. It has a 10-foot bed. Like it has 10 foot between centers. It's huge. I mean, he's, these guys, Howard and his family farm, thousands of acres. So they're always, last time I was in there, his son had a combine, 14-liter diesel engine tore apart out of a combine. Like they're always doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some of the smartest people you'll ever meet. But I just don't have room for that big of metal lathe. Like I would like a little Craftsman Atlas metal lathe that's maybe 2 foot between centers. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
And like you said, being able to cut hardware, stuff like that would be fun. But the other crossover that I've it is a lot of guys use them for metalworking. They're not necessarily metalworking pieces of equipment, and I think we've talked about them. Ornamental turning.
Oh, sure.
The ornamental lathes. That's something that's kind of really piqued my interest lately. Because a lot of guys, actually watchmakers, use them a lot for I'm talking about high end, honorary pocket watches and stuff like that. Something that's, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're super cool, but they kind of blend a milling machine, a metal lathe, and a wood lathe all together, which is they're just weird. But they're so cool. There's just so many parts. And if you've ever watched metal lathes turn at a much slower speed than a wood lathe does. Wood lathe, if I'm doing spindles, they're 32 to 3,800 RPM. Wood lathe or metal lathes generally are 600 to 700 RPM. So it's everything feels like it's in slow motion, right?
Right.
But when you watch an ornamental lathe going, everything's rocking. Everything's moving because there's oscillation in everything. So the headstock's rocking back and forth, but left to right too. And then the cutter is moving this way, and then it's, moving in a little bit of orbital pattern. So it's just it's like rubbing your tummy, patting your head, and then repeating the Pledge of Allegiance in German. You know what I mean? It's just So I guess to answer your question, yes, I would love a Bridgeport if anybody has one they want to sell me.
Right. Yeah.
I will drive hours to pick one up.
I remember when I started at Woodsmith in 2002, we did a tour up at Craig Tool.
Yeah.
In Huxley, and got through there because at that time they were making, I think 99% of the stuff that they were selling in-house. And we got to the manufacturing part of it, and it was funny because at the time they had 2 CNC mills, but they had probably, 15 milling machines in there. Mm-hmm. Just humongous Bridgeports. And at that point I had no concept of what these things were, because it was just not part of my experience. But to see these, they look like the woolly mammoth of drill presses.
Yeah. See, the thing that's different than woodworking is, and probably a big reason why you don't see a lot of these manual milling machines anymore, or people that do have them have a hard time staffing them, is there's an art to running a milling machine. To be a machinist, Like that is a very highly respected trade that takes a long time to master. So it's like there's all these different sets of tools, and I see them often when I go into like flea markets or antique stores around here. Like I actually just last week, 2 weeks ago, there was somebody that had a bunch of Starrett boxes. Like their boxes full of Starrett stuff, and they're machinist pieces, and I didn't know what some of them were. Some of them were like inside calipers and stuff like that, but like it's a whole different tool set, and there's a difference between being able to mill and let's say an aluminum Craig jig and being able to mill a high tolerance part. That's not what I would consider a high tolerance part. So it's a rabbit hole. Maybe for when I retire.
There you go.
There you go. Okay. All right. That's fair. We'll allow it.
I would like to be able to set one up to help cut dovetails on the soles of hand planes. That would be one of the very first things that I would do on a milling machine, would be figure out how to set it up to accurately cut dovetails for peened soles on hand planes. Because then that is by far the most tedious part of making a hand plane, is the dovetailing the sole. Yeah. And that'd be the absolute first thing I'd do.
Okay.
Well, first thing I'd do is I'd call Bobby and be like, hey, can you help me unload this?
Special shout out to Epilogue Laser and their cool set of tools that allow you to customize and make unique woodworking projects. You can check out all that they have at epiloguelaser.com. John, did you ever have any experience on any metalworking?
Yeah, a little bit back, like kind of what Logan described in his high school shop experience. We had all those things too. We had a similar size schools and agricultural, area. So we did a little bit of milling and welding and stuff along with the woodworking. But like Logan said, woodworking and metalworking do not mix. They were in separate rooms because of the oil and dirt and fire, and wood shavings and metal shavings do not react the same way. So, or mix, but so not since high school and college. We had a machine shop as well that we did some projects in, but that's been like 20 some years ago. I mean, turn of the century stuff right there. Early 2000s, the aughts.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The aught sevens.
Yeah. I blew out my son's mind the other day because he was asking about what it was like when I was in school, and I told him that I started kindergarten in 1978.
It's like when that 70s show was taking place.
Right.
Yeah, it was just like that.
Jeez.
It's basically a documentary.
Yeah.
And it was in Wisconsin too.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I might as well have told him that I watched the glaciers recede.
I mean,
right.
It was nice when they pulled back, because then it was a lot easier to get to school.
Yeah. Yep.
So there you go.
That's funny.
So anyway, I would love to hear anybody else's experience if you have worked on milling machines or have one yourself, what it's like and how you maybe mix woodworking and metalworking together. Also, if there are other trades or interests that you think would be helpful for a woodworker to have a friend in, would be kind of cool.
It's funny, this whole conversation just reminded me of, I got an invoice yesterday for the helical cutter head for the big jointer. And when I first published that article, I got an email from a guy. I'll have to go back and look, and it's been a year since he emailed me. but this gentleman was like the editor of like Guns and Shooting magazine or one of the guns magazines or something. And he's like, hey, if you ever need any machining done, let me know, because I'm going to have a woodworker, but I got a full machine shop set up too. And he sent me pictures of some of the stuff he did. I'm like, whoo, whoo, yeah, I need some brass inlay on my jointer fence. Like, can we put a little, like, evergreen tree on that? That'd be sweet.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. I did always think it was, and I've reached out to a few of them to see if anybody's interested in doing an article. I always thought it'd be interesting to do not necessarily a collaboration, but an article, a piece on a blacksmith, like the process of like forging chisels.
Sure.
Because there are companies that still hand forge chisels. Bar Corton out of Idaho, I think. They still hand forge all of their chisels. Like, to me, that's a super. Or actually, I had one planned, and my guy pulled out on the article. Forging an adze out of a ball peen hammer, because it already has the eye, has enough mass there. You can make it pretty easily. So we're going to do a bowl adze out of the ball peen hammer, because there is that kind of interwoven relationship there that our tools are not made necessarily by woodworkers. There are parts that are not.
Yeah,
for sure. So
yeah, and it is kind of fun to see some of those videos on YouTube, or seeing some of the Japanese blacksmiths making Japanese chisels and plane blades. Where they're forging the two different types of metal together, and it's just a cool process.
Yeah.
But a bowl adze out of a ball peen hammer, that's...
Makes sense, though, right? Because
it does.
The eye's already done. There's plenty of mass there to make it.
And I need a bowl adze.
Well, I do too. I know. That I was a little upset when Andy pulled out of that one, but yeah, I get it. So
yeah. Oh well.
Yeah. I gotta give a shout out to our coffee sponsor today, Blue Spruce, with my sweet collector's mug.
I didn't even know they made coffee.
It's very piney.
Yeah. Maybe some curly maple in there.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Not many people know that Strongsville, Ohio, is a coffee production center of the world.
Yeah.
So, speaking of woodworking tools, I've been working on a carved sign, and I've found carved sign and then a few other projects related, not really related, a few other woodworking projects. And I found a related tool that has proven to be really cool. And I think no matter what kind of woodworking you do, if you have an interest in hand tools, one hand tool that you should really consider having is some kind of a gouge. Mm-hmm. A medium, I don't know what this one is. Let's call it, it's about 1 inch wide. And
like a medium sweep.
Medium sweep. Let's call it a number 8, maybe. I'll put a picture on our show notes page for it. But for making the signs, it's really nice for removing material, a lot of material, pretty quickly. I've been doing the signs entirely by hand because it's just something that I enjoy doing. And I've also found that even just in my other furniture making, having a gouge is really nice because of its ability to very quickly remove material, and in shaping curved surfaces. Because I view it as kind of a mallet-powered scrub plane.
Okay, yep.
So that you could, if you're trying to remove something from a hollow or a recess or something like that, you can do a lot of removal in a very short amount of time, in the same way that a scrub plane can quickly remove material on surfaces, flat surfaces. So whether it's doing something flat or creating something recessed, but then also just pairing with it to create kind of a curved profile or transitions between different shapes. It's been really cool to have. So,
you know what else would be like a powered scrub plane? A spoon adze. Because, man, you could hog away some material with that real quick, too.
yes.
Like a tiny little one, but you could just...
Yeah. Or a bowl adze made from a ball peen hammer.
Ball peen, that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I got both of these gouges from you. I have a smaller version. I think that's a number 8 also, but it's like a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch wide. And that one's been really fun too. So I think Chris got me started on wanting a gouge, watching him do some stuff. And it's just, part of it's just Chris, just the way he works on things. But that's where it starts.
You know where I find a lot of those types of low sweep gouges, and it kind of scares me a little bit that I find them like this, is I find them in lots of turning tools.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times, like a lot of times I'll just be browsing Facebook. Now I'm giving away some of my secrets, but like I'll look for, search for lathe. I don't need another lathe.
Right.
But a lot of times I'll find a lathe that has a bunch of tools with it. I'll be like, hey, this has been up for several weeks. Do you want to unload the tools? And I'll buy just a lot of tools from somebody.
Yeah.
And I've done that 5 or 6 times in the last year. And you never really know what's in there. So sometimes it's a crapshoot. Like you can see, like oftentimes you can tell the brand of the tool by the handle that's on it.
Right.
Like you can tell if they're crappy, like Shopsmith or Buck or Great Neck, the tools that you just immediately go in the garbage. You can also tell the higher end tools like the Sorbies and stuff. But then sometimes you're like, that's not a turning tool. And it kind of scares me that somebody had this with their lathe.
Anything can be a turning tool.
Nope, it can't.
Once.
Once. So, like, sometimes I'll end up with what I think is a 5-gallon bucket full of turning tools, but half of them are actually carving gouges.
Okay.
And it's like, it scares me that somebody, and I know somebody used them at the lathe because they've clearly been sharpened on a grinder.
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, if you're turning small stuff, could you do it with a carving gouge? Yes.
Yes, you could. However, the tang construction is not designed for that torque.
Right.
Yeah. It's like maybe they're an estate thing where somebody didn't know what they were and just selling the tools like, oh, these all kind of look like the same thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times that is what it is. Yes. Yeah. So.
All that to say is label your tools. So in case something happens and somebody needs to unload them so that they can all go to the right place.
Well, okay. So that is a real question though. Like, have you guys ever considered, now, John, I know neither of you guys are as bad as I am with hoarding stuff, tools in particular. I started and I didn't finish it. And actually, I think, did Brian Nelson do an article on this? Like a shop,
like an inventory,
like an inventory. So it's like, I think I started that at one point. But I buy and sell tools so much, it's like you're not keeping up with it. But like, I feel like sometimes I need to do that just in case, like, so my wife knows what to do with stuff.
Right.
Yeah. You wouldn't want the IRS finding your ledger book either, so.
And it's funny, actually, Brian Van Huberschwin and I just had this conversation lunch a couple weeks ago. He's like, I basically told my wife, he's like, if something happens to me, just open the garage door and have a $5 flash sale. He's like, some people.
I thought he was going to say call Logan. If something happens to me, call Logan.
No, but he's like, I told her just have a flash sale. Some people are going to get smoking deals, but he's like, at that point, I just don't want you to worry about it. I'm like, oh, okay.
All right.
So
just bury me with them. It's gonna be a big hole.
Yep.
Just Viking style, just with your horde.
Dragon treasure hoard.
Yep. All right. I think that does it for this week's episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. I'd love to hear, like I said, if you have any experience with metalworking and machine working, or if you have a milling machine that you've used and enjoyed that process, or any other tools that you think are must-haves that don't really seem like they fit, like my discussion with the gouges for cabinet work. You can put that on the comment section on our YouTube channel or send us an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Special shout out to Epilogue Laser and their line of tools that help you personalize and customize your woodworking projects, not only for the uniqueness of it, but to add value. So you can check out their stuff at epiloguelaser.com. Thanks, everybody. Bye.